Hyundai's situation is worse, okay? And that's just a fact. They're working in a manufacturing environment where even Alabama law says that children under 16 can't work.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
There is way too much child labor going on. We've got a couple stories for you, and actually I just read this morning a huge feature from the New York Times that is really good, and that I would recommend reading. And I'm actually going to be reaching out to the author of this piece and see if we can't get them on at some point. The title of the piece is "Alone and Exploited Migrant Children Work Brutal Jobs Across the United States." The author is Hannah Dreer, with photographs by Kirsten Luce. So really detailed article. They interviewed more than 100 migrant child workers in 20 states, including here in Alabama. I haven't been able to finish it, but it's very good. I would recommend checking that out. So we wanted to give you some updates on this child labor story in Hyundai. And it was announced that just yesterday, according to Reuters, Hyundai told shareholders that it would divest its controlling stake in major Alabama auto parts plants where Reuters last year documented children as young as 12 working. Now, Hyundai had made noises about this before, and before they had said that they may even totally cut them off and stop doing business with them. The UAW and other advocacy groups balked at that, saying that, cutting business with these suppliers is not going to actually fix the issue. And in fact, taking jobs away from people that cooperated with these investigations, that reported these, violations, that's actually going to hurt the community, and that's going to disincentivize people from coming forward in the future. Right.
I mean, it's a form of collective retaliation in a way.
So, seeming to address these concerns, an executive wrote in the letter to shareholders that Hyundai was, quote, in the process of divesting its ownership interest in Smart, but it would ensure, quote, that economically important jobs in Laverne, Alabama community are preserved. So, glad to hear that, and obviously going to be looking for more from the future. In the future, he also said in the letter to shareholders, the Hyundai chief executive Jae-Hyun Chang, the company said that recent audits of 29 of its direct suppliers across Alabama made it confident that they are now in full compliance with underage labor laws. So that's,
Congratulations for entering, the 20th century.
Right. Just a reminder that one of the plants where children work, Smart Alabama LLC in rural Laverne, Alabama, they're a direct Hyundai subsidiary. Hyundai are the only people that own any part of this plant. Additionally, according to Hyundai's financial statements from last year, the automaker controls a 72% stake in Smart. And so now they're saying that they're going to be divesting. They're going to be totally separating from these companies, but they're still going to be, presumably, it sounds like, doing business with them, ordering parts from them. So I'm not sure exactly how that's going to work, but when the talk of, this divestment stuff comes up, I see that as an opportunity to say the workers should own this thing. The workers should own this thing, and there is a proposal that Jeremy Corbyn in the UK has put out there in his 2017 run for Prime Minister that I am a big fan of. And you all know, listening to the show, that I have long, of course, I'm a union member. I'm a supporter of democracy. I'm a supporter of economic democracy. I think that workers should control the things. We should control our work. We should control our production, right? And that's not an unreasonable thing. One of the ways that Jeremy Corbyn sought to incentivize worker ownership while staying within the bounds of, a capitalist system is that any time in this proposal, obviously did not become law because Jeremy Corbyn didn't become prime minister, his party didn't win the parliament, all this stuff. But the proposal was to say that if this becomes law, anytime a company wants to sell itself, wants to go bankrupt, in this case, wants to divest, the first thing that they have to do is they have to give the workers a right of first refusal, meaning that some venture capital firm cannot come in and buy this firm, people with no connection to the community, people with really no connection to the work, right? These private equity firms are not, you don't have private equity firms that really know a lot about this or that industry. They're just investment firms that also happen to own coal mines or hospitals or schools or all these other things. They only see these as investment assets. And so, under this proposal, if a company wants to sell itself, before they can go to some leeches in DC and New York private equity groups, international private equity groups, they have to give an offer to the workers and say, look, this is the fair market value of our enterprise that you have spent, in many cases, your entire life. That maybe you've even sacrificed blood, sweat, tears, body parts, in these metal stamping facilities. Some people have no doubt lost fingers here, right? But these people are not going to get a say in what happens, in who buys them. And what happens when somebody buys them is they are going to have total control over the way that production is structured. They're going to have total control over the work rules, over everything. They can reduce salaries. They can cut jobs. They can make things more unsafe. They can hire more child laborers, and the workers are going to have no say over it. Absolutely no say over it. And that doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense. So the workers should have the opportunity to collectively buy the organization that they make run anytime the owners say, we want to get rid of it. And to finance that, the government should create low or no interest loans to help the workers do this.
Absolutely.
This is absolutely an eminently reasonable thing. This is by no means authoritarian or even frankly you could say it's anti-capitalist in a sense because you're really injecting some democracy, and capitalism is one of the things about it. Obviously, capitalism is structured around markets, but one of the things about it is the hierarchy, and you're really cutting at that hierarchy. But if the workers don't want to buy it, if they're fine with some private equity firm doing it, or even they just would prefer to get a different job, or they're not interested in it, then they don't have to under this proposal. Under this proposal, they don't have to buy the company. They don't have to take the low or no interest loan from the government to buy the company, and somebody else can buy it. And that's totally fine. That's totally fine under this proposal. It makes so much sense that that's the reason that it's not law, right? It just makes too much sense.
That's exactly what I was going to say. It makes so much sense. That's why we rarely talk about it in the United States of America. That's why we're referring to, a brother over in the UK when we talk about this idea. But I think there's so much there. When we look at deindustrialization across the United States, if we look at outsourcing across the United States, politicians of both parties for all these decades have come up with all sorts of promises that they've made about this, but very little concrete actual policies to address any of these issues. And in fact, typically it's policies to make them worse, right? This is a policy, the right of first refusal, paired with, as you mentioned, some form of financing, which could easily be accomplished if we implemented postal service banking, as many have long advocated for. There are ways to do that, and that would be a backstop against these plant closures, this outsourcing that devastates so many communities, particularly rural communities here in the South and across the country, especially in the Midwest.
Absolutely. And, give us a call, 844-899-TVLR, 844-899-8857. Tell me why that's not a good idea. Give me a justification why the workers, not even why the company should be mandated that the workers, to give ownership over to the workers, to give control over the workers. Why shouldn't they have the opportunity? Why should they not be able to have an opportunity now that the company that they are working for is saying, we don't want the ownership stake in this. We don't want it. We don't want it. We want our hands clean. We want our hands clean. Why should the people who do the work not have the opportunity to run it? Tell me why. 844-899-TVLR.
Yeah, I mean, and I know we need to get back to Hyundai's child labor updates, but on this note, I mean, I can't help but think about Warrior Matt, right? What if the miners themselves had been provided that opportunity back in 2016 during the bankruptcy? You know, so as opposed to BlackRock and a consortium of hedge fund investors, the miners themselves were able to purchase the mines, right? And then they would have really been able to bring the company back up to snuff, but in a way that was not exploitive to them. So I think there's just a lot there that we do not discuss in this country when it comes to the right of first refusal and the ways to finance that in a bottom-up kind of way that could really expand economic democracy and expand community development.
Absolutely. Previously, Hyundai had made mention that they would hire direct suppliers, that they would direct suppliers to stop using third-party staffing agencies, going back to the updates, which are how the children found their way into these places, right? And that's one of the issues with, even though Hyundai is 100% owner of one of these companies, 72% owner of one of the others, it's got a different name, and so that's one measure of separation from Hyundai. You know, Hyundai can say, oh, we have all these commitments to safety and the safety of children and all of this stuff. And we know it's BS, and that's just one of the way that they are able to separate themselves from the actual issues. And then the suppliers, they separate themselves from the issue by going to these third-party staffing agencies to bring children in, and they can say, oh, I had no idea that this obviously 12-year-old child is a 12-year-old child. The third-party staffing agency said they were an adult. Who, you know, how could I know? How could I know? And then, you know, so the supplier says, how could I know? Hyundai says, how could I know? And that's how they get away with this, right? So Hyundai is going to be directing, Hyundai said they would be directing suppliers to stop using third-party agencies to staff the places.
Imagine that, an employer directly hiring employees.
Yeah, that would be crazy. And just as a reminder about the work that these children are doing, we're going to be talking about you know, children should not be working even in a McDonald's when they're, you know, 12, 13, 14 years old, and they shouldn't be working at a McDonald's, you know, beyond 9 p.m. And we're going to be talking about a case like that here in just a moment. But this is not that. We can say both of these things are bad while recognizing that the Hyundai situation is worse, okay? And that's just a fact. This is not children working at a fast food restaurant, which there are dangers there, but that's not that. They're working in a manufacturing environment where even Alabama law, state law, says that children under 16 can't work, and then over 16 to 18, you've got to have like parents' permission or something. But under 16, you're not allowed to work in these manufacturing environments. And this isn't even, the facility in Laverne is not even just a normal manufacturing environment. This is a manufacturing environment where OSHA has fined this manufacturer more than $50,000 for safety violations, including amputation hazards and crush hazards. So this is manufacturing environments. Even Alabama has recognized this is just so unsafe. Children shouldn't be in it at all. But then they are an illegally so unsafe manufacturing environment. So this is the kind of stuff that we're talking about these children working in. 4 plants have been confirmed to have used children as young as the age of 12. 6 more are under investigation for a total of 10. But anyway, they had previously said they direct suppliers to stop using these third-party agencies. However, in the letter yesterday, Chang said that they were, quote, discouraging suppliers from relying on such staffing agencies in the future. And that is very suspicious to me. Suspicious and eerie. Something else that happened since the last time we spoke about this is that 33 House representatives from the U.S. House of Representatives wrote a letter about this situation, none of whom represent Alabama. Now, when you hear that, you'll probably think like I did that, why are there no Alabama representatives on this letter? But I think that some of the contents of the letter will kind of belie the reasoning. So firstly, they asked the Department of Labor to look into Hyundai's supply chain for child labor. I think the Department of Labor is doing that, but that's fine. More pressure is good on this front. But the kicker is that they also asked Hyundai to cut ties with its suppliers that used child labor, which is something that worker advocacy groups, including the UAW, the United Auto Workers, have specifically said, we don't want Hyundai to do this, right? We want Hyundai to continue buying parts manufactured from these facilities because that's what's best for the community. We just want, you can want that while still wanting child labor to be eliminated. You don't, the only way to, it's not like closing these plants is the only way to eliminate child labor, right? Obviously.
Right. They could stay open and follow the law.
Right.
I know that's radical, but that seems like a pretty obvious solution to me.
Yeah.
Is that they actually follow the law and that the government, that the state implements regulations and follows regulations and actually makes sure that they're following the law.
Yeah. So in the letter, the representatives state that they are, quote, concerned that Hyundai, at the Department of Labor's suggestion, reversed course on the commitment and will not cut ties with its Alabama suppliers that use child labor. And that's a good thing. That's what the UAW does not want them to cut ties with Alabama suppliers that used child labor. They just want the Alabama suppliers to not use child labor.
Right. So, yeah, I understand the representatives who wrote that letter, and I understand, what they're trying to do, and I applaud them for actually taking some action on the issue, particularly
since... You got to think these things through.
Right, exactly, yeah. I mean, obviously, as a working class person in Alabama, you really have no representation in Washington, D.C., or very little, right? So, I applaud them for being interested in this issue and for, being willing to say something about this issue. But yeah, that's where you have to really think it through and think about the impact on local communities. Because, yeah, you just shutting it down and everyone losing their job is not a good solution by any means, right? It's how about accountability for those who have been breaking the law and enforcement of the law moving forward.
You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.